Hi, I'm Bill Perkins. Welcome to Compass TV. If you love the Lord, love your Bible, and love to learn, you're going to absolutely love this presentation. In the Bible, God talks about some women as being created very beautiful, like Abraham's wife, Sarah. Well, Gina Loudon is, let's say, very easy on the eyes, but she's more than beautiful on the outside. She's also a solid believer. A mom of 5 kids whose husband is elected state senator in Missouri, and she's also quite smart, earning a doctorate in organizational leadership. She used all of this background hosting guests on several TV talk shows. So you'll enjoy this quite interesting presentation, Confessions of a Female Talk Show Host by Dr. Gina Loudon.
I want to talk to you today about, yes, my history and my past and the mistakes I've made. Hopefully you can learn a little something from them. But I know something about you. If you're anything like me, this last election was crushing. This last election felt like the end of that last best hope that President Reagan spoke about all those years ago in his Shining City on the Hill speech. This last election felt like the end of our opportunity to change things in this country. And I want to challenge you, even more than challenge you, I want to dare you to believe again in the miracles that God has already proven to you in your life all of these years. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. They dare us all the time. The other side dares us every single day. The question is not what the other side does. The question that we have to ask ourselves is how then will we respond? And that's what I want to talk about. How dare you, they ask, how dare you love your country, call it God ordained, they say, and contend for rights like those old-fashioned ones like life, liberty, and the pursuit of those who threaten the country that you love? How dare you? How dare you defend the borders of your country, fight for her sovereignty, and discuss her heritage? Well, I'll tell you how I dare. But first, I want to discuss the meaning of the word. What does it require to dare? I remember my husband was raised Christian Science. And when I married him, he said, will you marry me? And I said, yes, on 2 conditions. He said, what are they? I said, 1, I'm a business person. This is how I think. 1, that you are not going to go in the military because I don't want to move away from my mama. And here I am in California now, and she's in Missouri. That's another story. But I said, and number 2, we're going to unite in a church, and it's not going to be yours. And so we ended up going to this great Southern Baptist church in Baldwin, Missouri. We had this awesome pastor, Bob Curtis, and he'd get up on that pulpit, and his finger, he had one of those extended fingers that some pastors have, and he'd start putting that finger over that, and you knew you were in for some trouble then. But I remember so much of what he taught us in those first formative years of our marriage. And one thing he always says, and I'm sure the pastors in this audience have used this before, but I love this. He said, you only sin when you're in these positions. Remember the word halt. When you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. That's where you fall down. I can't name a sin in my life that didn't happen under one of those 4 circumstances. So I like to think in those terms too, and I want you to remember that God is daring you right now to choose to believe in him again in a renewed way. And this last election is only his challenge to you. He's still on his throne. The word dare, determination for a battle that is long. When has a battle not been long? Where in biblical history do you see someone's lifetime accomplishment happening lickety-split? It didn't. It's a long time. Just think of Moses. It's pretty much as far as you have to go. Tenacity is critical. Aim, second letter in the word dare, yes. Know your enemy, know your strengths, and know your weapon. I don't think I need to say a whole lot more about that. Resourcefulness. Know where to go for what you need and know who holds it all in his hands, and it isn't you, right? Efficiency. Quantrill said it best. I love this quote. I put it on the bottom of all my emails. If you've got an email from me, you have this quote in your email. Raise the black flag and ride it hard, boys. Our cause is just and our enemies are many. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about enemies because I want you to go out and make some. If you haven't made any good enemies lately, you aren't doing much. I dare to do what I am challenged to do because I know about a movie star who turned out to be president and spoke to this little girl as I laid shaking in my bed at night, afraid a nuclear bomb was going to drop on my head. He said, 56 men, a little band so unique, we've never seen their like since. 56 men. How many of us are in this room? We want to change the world. Do you not think we're capable? 56 men. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. 16 gave their lives. Which 16 in this room are willing to give their lives? Most gave their fortunes, and all of them preserved their sacred honor. What manner of men were they? Certainly, they were not an unwashed revolutionary rabble, nor were they adventurers in a heroic mood. 24 were lawyers and jurists, 11 merchants and tradesmen, 9 were farmers. They were men who would achieve security but valued freedom more. And what price did they pay? Do you remember this speech? John Hart was driven from the side of his desperately ill wife. After more than a year of living almost as an animal in the forest and in caves, he returned to find his wife had died and his children had vanished. He never saw them again. His property was destroyed and he died of a broken heart, but with no regret, only pride for the part he had been privileged to play at Independence Hall. Carter Braxton of Virginia lost all of his ships. They were sold to pay his debts. He died in rags. So it was with Ellery, Clymer, Hall, Walton, Gwinnett, Rutledge, Morris, Livingston, and Middleton. Nelson, learning that the Cornwallis was using his home for a headquarters, personally begged Washington to fire him and destroy his home. He died bankrupt. It has never been reported that any of these men ever expressed bitterness or renounced their action as somehow not worth the price. 56 rank-and-file ordinary citizens had founded a nation that grew from sea to shining sea. 5 million farms, quiet villages, cities that never sleep, all done without an area redevelopment plan, without urban renewal, or a rural assistance league program. I dare every day, my friends, because they dared. I dare because my God asks no less of me. And I dare because if I don't, who will? And finally, I dare because I really feel at this point in our history, not to dare is literally treasonous. I dare to speak of honor and integrity and backbone. I did so in my book. I'm going to tell you a little more about that too here in just a moment. Honor and backbone like our founders had, like the Pilgrims had, and like my own husband had when he served as senior senator for our state of Missouri, former state. We live in California now. That's another story. I watched as he turned down bribes as we were young, starving in our marriage, and he was newly elected. I watched as he kept his eye on the Lord and held his colleagues accountable, regardless of political cost to himself. You have no idea. I watched as he dared to implement the bravery of William Wilberforce and shut down a Missouri abortion clinic. And I watched as God made my husband's enemies his footstool here in this lifetime. Not because John dared to do the right thing, you understand, but because God dared to send his own son to die for all the ways that John and all of us fail every single day of our lives. I dare to fight my fight in my domain, in the territory that God gave me for my unique constitution, broadcasting. I'm in a small minority as a woman in broadcasting. Shh, don't tell the men I'm here, okay? Other women dared to lurk in this domain long before me. There was Eve, the first woman, mother of all of us. Whether it was a fast red convertible or hot new boots, she will forever be the first to be tempted by something shiny, hot, and red. I speculate, though, that by that apple, she was not a true foodie. I need to tell you, that apple will never tempt me the way a nice, juicy slice of bacon does, so I won't have that problem. But still, Eve is a great reminder that the enemy lurks seeking to destroy us. There was Mary, a brave teenage mother who, through immaculate conception with an older man who was not her husband, dared to give birth to the history and the Savior of our world, a world changer, to be sure. There was Deborah. She rose up, a mother for Israel when no man would. Oh, and she successfully guided Barak. Okay, it was a different Barak, but the irony is too sweet for me to leave out of this speech, right? And then there was the beautiful Esther. The book of Esther shows the choice we make between seeing the hand of God in our circumstances in life and seeing things as merely coincidence. I always choose to see God's hand, even in that last election. We God-fearing folks dare to believe in a mystery that is unseen. We dare to base our homes, our lives, however flawed, upon that very mystery. See, it's not that the statists and the communists you've been hearing about all day, it's not that they don't believe in a higher power. They just get really confused about that, what that power is. And I'm not a preacher. I just want to tell you I'm from the Ozark part of Missouri. If you've ever flown over it, you see little mountains. That's kind of where I'm from. We have a lot of preachers there. It's kind of Bible belty. So I know a thing or two about the good book, and I think the liberals do too. Like this, we say, you and I say, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, right? They say, blessed are the young, for they shall inherit our national debt. We say, see, they're not so different from us. We say freedom matters. They say America's just as free as it ever was. Well, that's true, as long as you're not a taxpayer. A lot more free stuff, in fact, if you think about it. They say, thanks to Obama, Pelosi, and Reid, we are a lot more honest people. Once we're all broke, there will be no reason at all to lie on your tax returns, so you can take faith in that. We shouldn't think we are somehow better just because we believe in God. They have their Messiah, you know. Our God created the heavens and the earth in 7 days. Pretty cool. But their God created 57 states where there were only 50. Our God turned water into wine. We think that's really cool. But their God turned wine into Kool-Aid, and his followers drink it every single day. Jesus is the good shepherd, but their God is a good shepherd too, or is a shepherd too. Forgive the good there. Just think of all the sheeple he has in his flock. They follow him just so blindly. Our God raised people from the dead, but we can't deny that just 3 months ago, on a Tuesday in November, their God raised voters from the dead. So we can believe it. I met my husband at a blood drive. I'll just let that sink into you for a moment. He says he caught me at a weak moment. Our first date was a 4-hour trip to vote for a U.S. senator. I should have probably clued in right about then that I was in for a life of politics. I'd managed to live in the capital city of Missouri all my life and had nothing to do with politics, and I was very proud of that fact. I thought politics were dirty. That was for people that like to dabble in dirtiness. And then I married my husband. While a lot has changed, a lot has stayed the same. Maybe I should have known that my life would be filled with roller coaster highs and lows and the adventure of a lifetime in politics and media. But almost the moment we were married, we both had a very strange desire. We both knew we wanted to adopt a child with Down syndrome. Kind of strange for two 18-year-olds to know that at that time in our lives. We didn't have much together. Like I said, we didn't even share the same faith at all. But we knew we wanted to adopt a child with Down syndrome. It never seemed strange to us. It was a calling. And you know about callings. Everyone in this room knows about callings or you wouldn't be here. But then life got busy, and John was called to the House of Representatives, and after that was elected Missouri's youngest state senator. We decided to take our children as they came and go to the Capitol with them. Like many of you, we would dare to fight for our family to be together. When our first was school-aged, we chose to homeschool her right there in the Capitol. And I served as his chief policy advisor for free. I still do, by the way. Let's just say this didn't go over very well with the good old boys club. They didn't want a woman in their smoky back rooms making plans, and they certainly didn't want any children there. Theirs were tucked safely away at home, out of sight and out of mind. And I'm not talking about their children. We were first family in the state that had ever served as a unit. I'm happy to tell you that today that has changed. There are a lot of other families that now will go and serve as a family, taking their children and homeschooling them. But at that point, it was absolutely unheard of. But before we knew it, We had written and reformed the state workers' comp law, saving businesses in our state millions of dollars, written a landmark health insurance law to make sure insurance was more family and business friendly, changed the labor committee, you're going to love this if you listen to me now, changed the labor committee to the small business committee, and yes, my husband became the chair of it. We took the law in our state that said midwifery, having a baby at home, was for some reason a felony. We were the only place in the free world who believed midwifery should be a felony, punishable by prison time. And he flipped it on its head, and now the midwives are legal, free, and flourishing. John had risen to senior senator, and finally he passed his bill, giving families the power to sue anyone who took their daughter for an abortion without a parental consent. His landmark legislation crippled the abortion industry in Missouri and closed one abortion factory forever. Our family grew, and God enlarged our territory, as you know he tends to do. I became even more daring with each new baby. I had more to fight for now. But in my heart, I knew that every day babies in this country who had Down syndrome were being aborted. More than 90% of them are. And I couldn't help but wonder why God had not yet given us this baby we'd prayed for. We had gone to every Planned Parenthood we could go to. I called them repeatedly and said, when you have a woman come in with a positive triple test, please just give her my name. And if she wants to call me, have her call me. Not one call in more than a decade. I can personally testify that Planned Parenthood is not in the business of anything but killing babies. But then, the most amazing miracle took place. As I was walking from the governor's mansion to the Capitol the day of John's landmark pro-life legislation, which, by the way, I want to tell you, he had proposed for 3 years. Any of you involved in government know how this works. But I want to ask you a question. He proposed this pro-life bill for 3 years. Who do you think killed it every year? It wasn't the Democrats. It was the conservatives fighting for the limelight on the issue. It was conservative Republicans that killed it and conservative lobby groups who wanted their name on it. So the pro-life legislation did pass, as I said, and God doesn't speak audibly to me very often. Some of you out there might be charismatic. I'm not. But as audibly as he ever has, he spoke to me that day as I was walking back to the Capitol from the governor's mansion and told me in no uncertain terms that for some reason now we were going to get our baby with Down syndrome that we'd prayed for. There was only one problem. This mama was lying low. I had just lost twins and a single, and I was in the grind of a campaign. I was pregnant again. This would be the fourth baby I would lose, and I was likely miscarrying this baby, I'd been told. Life felt a blur. In my despair, I called my best friend who had lost her husband only weeks before in a small plane crash. She said, "Remember God's promise, Gina. The Lord will restore what the locusts have eaten away." Her faith and strength surprised me, but in my sinful rebellion, I thought to myself, he can't restore my twins. That would be a miracle. I wouldn't even dare to hope for that. Why don't we dare to hope for miracles? On my birthday in January, I was busy staring at my half-empty cup when my friends, I was on bed rest at home with this baby, didn't even get to go to the Capitol with John, which I was very spoiled in being able to do. I had my little bitty ones all around, and I can't get out of bed, right? What do my church friends decide to do? Well, it's my birthday. They decide, my girlfriends from church, that they're going to have a surprise birthday party in the middle of my living room with me on the sofa. And you just can take about one look at me to find out I'm way too proud for that. Sorry, it's one of my sins. I confess it, but it hasn't changed yet. And so friends from church come with their balloons and their noisemakers and their presents, and they're all around the sofa, and all I can think about is what a wreck my home is. I haven't been able to clean it. I am a personal disaster. I cry all the time. It's just about what I had become proficient at. And here they all were. Well, I finally got them to leave, and I was probably not very gracious as I should have been. A call came that would change everything. Do you ever get one of those phone calls where the phone rings, and for some reason it's almost like you know that call is prophetic? Something about that call is going to change your life forever? Well, I had waited more than a decade for this phone call. A baby had been born in a faraway state. He had Down syndrome, a heart defect, a lung condition, a hip problem, failure to thrive. He was on a feeding tube. but he was all ours if we could just get there to take him. So John never does this, but that day he had meetings with the governor about some other priority legislation he had, and he said, honey, I know everything's very tenuous with you, you're on bed rest and all this, but try not to call me today. If you call me, I will assume and it's an emergency and I'll step out of my meetings. But if you can not call me to tell me, that you're bored again, that would be great. So I hated to interrupt John, who was in the Capitol in a lunch meeting with the governor, but they said this baby wouldn't make it much longer without someone to hold him. And I believed them. So I was terrified. When I called John to tell him the situation, I told him we probably shouldn't do it, and I knew that. This wasn't the right timing. If I tried to travel there, I would probably lose this baby. It would be completely against doctor's orders. And he had a lot going on politically. I didn't want any of his bills to die. I didn't want him to not be reelected because he didn't show up for the session that day. I didn't even know if I was really mentally and emotionally capable of handling the judgment that I knew would come when we brought home this baby with all these problems, or if we went to adopt him only to find that he had died. Because that would make the papers, and I knew it, and I didn't want the personal criticism right then. Tell them yes, he shouted when he got on the phone. And I said, well, I think maybe this is irrational, honey. I want to give you time to think about this. I've asked for 24 hours. I think you should think about this. We could lose the campaign. We could lose the baby if we traveled. He said, Gina, this is simple. And my husband never talks to me this way. He said, if we don't have room in our hearts for this baby who needs us right now, then God does not need me in politics. Call them back. Tell them yes. Put your mother on the next plane to go love on that baby. We'll leave tomorrow by car. Oh, yeah, and one more thing, he said. Congratulations. You're the mother of twin boys. And he was right. God had restored what the locusts had eaten away, just like he promises he will. How dare I not believe in the miracles he has demonstrated in my life 100 times over, too many to talk to you about in the short time I have with you today. Sometimes miracles hide if we can just dare to believe. The miracle of a midwife happened along the way, and I believe she was God's provision to save the baby that I was pregnant with, my little guy, Bo. We adopted Samuel on February 8th. We call that his gotcha day. And the rumors are true, as Governor Palin and I can tell you, and any other mother or parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle or sister or brother of someone with Down syndrome can tell you, there is an awful lot of joy in that one extra chromosome. I remember the day that our adoption of Samuel was finalized. We'd only had him for a few weeks, but like most things in my life, I really do this all the time. It's another sin I'm confessing. Even really big moments, the ceremony pops up on my iPhone, and I think very little of it. I get to where I need to be, and I got to where I needed to be that day. But I was flying at a breakneck pace in the midst of a statewide campaign with my mind in a million places. My problem that I'd had during my pregnancy that was supposed to be the end of this pregnancy had miraculously cured itself, as you might have guessed. And so I was hot on the campaign trail, dragging that new little guy with Down syndrome. We got there to pick him up in Florida. Guess what? Completely healed of everything except Down syndrome. Still is. So there I was. So there I was that day on our finalization of his adoption, and I'm rushing through it, and I'm not stopping to think about all the miracles I witnessed along the way because I was too busy, as I often am, like so many of you probably are, burning it at both ends and just really, really running and fighting the fight. And I got there, and there's all my children lined up, and I felt really bad when I realized that, I looked in their eyes and I realized for my kids, because they're all dressed all formal, little bows on their little heads, and they're all excited, and they're looking at me like, can you believe this day is really finally here? He's really ours? And I realized, oh my gosh, I have barely stopped to give this a thought. How dare me? So while I felt it was a stop to me in the middle of my business day, I knew this day would be forever sealed in our minds. They were gazing at little Samuel, and he was looking at me. And then the presiding official read the words that would change my life forever. I now pronounce you Samuel's forever family. I remember being shocked by the convulsive tears that came from nowhere right in the middle of this whole group of people. And the words forever family hit me in the heart. I knew that day I would never be the same, and I haven't. The video.
every child deserves a family. We just thought, you know what? We have a family ready-made for some little guy that might want to be part of our family. And so really for 10 years, we tried to find a child that was adoptable with Down syndrome. It's not as easy as you might think right at first. 90% of babies with Down syndrome are aborted. But luckily, now some moms are finding out, I could put my child up for adoption, and maybe if loving family would take that child, then we want to be that sort of advocate that says, yeah, this is definitely something that you could choose, and we have been so blessed by adopting Samuel. There's just no question that it has been I would say the hand of God in our family.
No.
Of course, when Sarah Palin had her child, if ever there was like an argument, this is inconvenient in my life and abortion ought to be an alternative, she jumped right in the face of that and chose life and really set an example.
You don't ever know what God is going to tell you you're ready for. Just because this is the decision we made for our family doesn't mean that we think it's necessarily the best decision for every family out there. But in our particular case, we had the room in our hearts and room in our home, and decided that this is something we could do.
Politicians are, we're human. I like to tell people we've got our sort of party platform issues, but each one of us is prone to kind of migrating into issues that you're going to focus more on. And for mine, certainly valuing all life is important, but focusing a little more on those special needs kids became a higher priority.
My children were raised with this as a value, that you love people, for who they are, right where they are, even when they're different from you, even if they look different, even if their political views are different, you just love them.
Moments and miracles that we dare to embrace bind us as children of God. So many stand on moments and miracles, and though mine was different than yours, we are brothers in those moments and miracles. How dare I? How dare you? The naysayers will say. Hate is gonna hate, as my daughter likes to say. They probably adopted that little boy for political reasons. We've heard that from our enemies as they spew. But in my heart of hearts, I soon realized that I wasn't made of the kind of courage that I wish I had to raise this little guy. I felt kind of small and kind of alone and kind of incompetent, if you want to know the truth. And I questioned my ability to be the mother of one so special and so unique. Samuel wasn't one that I could equip. I couldn't send him to the best school and painstakingly challenge him to be stronger than any human I knew, or even teach him to use a gun if things in this country get that bad. I would never even have the opportunity to teach Samuel to drive. As the American economy continued to collapse, I realized that the only safety I had for Samuel was the continuation of our republic and the freedom that our family had to take care of him. Prior to that moment, I was very content to be the political wife who stood 3 feet to the left out of the way of those who wanted to meet my husband. I loved hosting dinner parties, making our home a warm, inviting place for guests to come, and a place that my husband could come home to find refuge. I loved raising up my little army and telling myself that was my contribution to our culture. I had accomplished my professional goals and 5 amazing children. I had the degree I wanted. I was content driving the carpool and felt no guilt for not driving out the vote. Like you, I dare to fight, not because this is not the reason I fight. I do not fight because I'm so sure that I'm right on every issue. I am fighting for my children. Whether or not you've birthed, adopted, or taught, I know it is the children that bind us as the adopted beloved of a God that we dare to love. What was the moment that God whispered to you that brought you to where you are right here today? Did you feel inadequate at all like I did? I thought of more outgoing, tougher, prettier, smarter, more creative, stronger, meaner women than I knew, and I asked God, why me? Why me? Do you ever wonder why you? I love knowing that God doesn't call those he equips those he calls. So we are equipped with exactly the tools we need in order to answer his call. I believe the things that make us parents and the things that make us human are precisely the tools that God gives us to fight this battle right now. Whether you are a mother, dad, pastor, sister, best friend, your God-given parental instincts are your fight reaction. You nurture, you protect, and you fight, and you were born for such a time as this. Whether you have the guts like Deborah, surrender like Mary, pioneer spirit like Eve, courage like Joshua, a servant's heart like our great organizers today, God is calling you to dare to continue the fight. Or maybe you have laser focus like Reagan, clarity like Bill Perkins. You ever read his morning things? Those are so awesome. Or maybe you have a screw loose like me. Whatever your gift, you were made for this moment. Yes, after this election. Yes, after socialists have invaded our country very effectively. Yes, even though Barack Obama is the most arrogant man to ever grace the White House in our history. You were still made for this moment, and you are an integral part of what needs to take place to change this culture. At this point in my life, I was complete and our family was complete. John had served his tenure, we were done with the Senate, and our plan was to sail around the world with our little family. Don't you love when you tell God your plans and he just kind of laughs? So I could hardly wait to retreat to my home, my refuge with my family, to decorate their lives, plan our trip around the world, raise my new little twin cubs in the security of a life outside of politics. But not so fast. I was called to run for office. I'm not even a fan. I'm just going to confess. Here's another Gina sin. You ready? Not a fan of women in politics. Just not. To me, it sort of smacks of the whole women in the pulpit thing, which I'm really not a fan of. And I did not want to run for office. But there was no one. And my husband's seat had been occupied by him, and he couldn't run again. We spent 2 years trying to recruit one man to run for that seat. I knew I'd be attacked by the left for being too conservative, but nothing could have prepared me for how I was brutally and relentlessly attacked by the establishment Republican opponent I was running against and her cronies for being a mom. They said I was too young. They said I was too plain-spoken. I was too feminine. They attacked the way I dressed. Bye-bye navy suits and black patent pumps, I guess. I was attacked when I took my children on the campaign trail. She drags those poor children everywhere. What do they want me to do, store them somewhere? I was attacked when I didn't bring them. See, she's abandoned her children to take on a life in politics. You can't win with these folks, you know. While other candidates answered questions about education, crime, and taxes, I was asked where I would store my children while I served. Well, I knew exactly. I had spent the last 14 years in my husband's office with my children. I knew exactly where my children would be, and it was right beside me. They attacked me saying, don't you think that a mother of 5 should be home taking care of her children, especially one of them is retarded, special needs? It was like a 1940 revival of the across the fence blue hair gossip taking place, and it had a life of its own. I was used to the attacks of liberals, and I can deal with them every day. I do in my job, believe me. And though I was always one who wished conservatives could act like adults, wouldn't that be nice? I'd been disappointed before. I wasn't too shocked to be disappointed again. It was conservatives who, when we decided to adopt Samuel, said things like, and they really did, "You'll ruin your family photographs." And that the adoption would somehow be unfair to my other children, that I had a right to make that sacrifice if I so chose, but I didn't have a right to impose this sacrifice on my children, as if I were going to ruin their lives. My children can tell you today it was the best thing that ever happened to them. It was conservatives who told me to sit down and shut up again and again, but I dared not to. In the 14 years my husband served in the Missouri legislature, through 6 elections he ran for and won. Do you know that he was never, ever, not one time, asked how he would legislate as the father of 5, one with Down syndrome? Not ever. It's the only question I was asked. I wanted to scream, "You don't get it. I'm not running despite my children. I'm running because no one else will, and somebody has to fight for their future. And my husband served his time, and we have term limits. What would you like me to do?" Despite setting fundraising records, winning every debate, having the sole endorsement of Concerned Women for America, Missouri Right to Life, and the National Rifle Association, on August 5th, 2008, I lost my battle with the Republican establishment who attacked everything about me that I held sacred. When they could no longer attack me, they attacked my children. They'll do that, you know. The loss was dizzying. The next year was fateful, though. God always has a bigger plan. I rose up with the advent of the Tea Party. Andrew Breitbart took me under his wing and agreed to mentor me, calling me his official co-troublemaker, and I wear that title proudly. And before I knew it, I was asked to host a radio show on a local Christian radio station. That company then promoted me to syndicated secular radio PM drive host, and I was regionally syndicated then in 8 states in the South and the Midwest. It was like winning an election, and it was a lot like losing an election, too. They said this will ring familiar. She always brings her children. She never brings her children. It was like a rerun of a bad dream. But I dared to continue the fight, even when I didn't believe in myself, as so many of you have, and as many of you are being asked to do right here today. I learned to count my enemies as a score. I taught my children to dare to make enemies. You know, Churchill said, "Got enemies? Good." That means you've stood for something sometime in your life. Shouldn't that be now? I count each enemy a jewel in my crown, and just for fun, because I like colors, I assign them each a color by name. So I have my crown. It's working out very nicely. God then chose to use me to create my own show, the Dr. Gina Show. And I'll tell you more about what's happening with me right now, but this is the next video, I think. There you go.
Budget in every way. I'm Gina.
I'm Gina Loudon on News Radio FM 95.7 and AM 600 Kogo.
Because this is really a chance for us to peek behind the curtain, so to speak. We remember you from Love Boat, Fred Grandy, but this is a lot more like a big old sinking ship, in my opinion. What do you say?
Oh, I like that ship analogy.
Are you an old white stodgy country club guy?
Well, you're looking at me. I'll let you be the judge of that.
I know, because she's beautiful.
Yes, but
So you don't hate women, I just wanted to clarify.
This
The
year,
idea-
President Obama cut $487 billion of our defense budgets for 2013 through 2021, and he said he'll veto any attempt by Congress to reverse
Everybody
these
is
cuts.
talking about your movie. Why is it such a resounding success?
Well, I think the film.
Gina Loudon here on 790 KABC in LA.
The Washington Metro Area Transit Authority debuts their anti-groping campaign. You know, that does happen on the Metro. It's kind of gross. There's standing room only, people rubbing up against you. I mean, what if a TSA worker is on the subway in DC and they grope you? What happens then? It's perfectly legal, right? Isn't that what they're paid to do? They're professional government gropers, right?
Welcome, Ambassador John Bolton.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
We have the Syrian president calling the uprisings there a major conspiracy. Is he right, or is it just freedom-loving people like you and me taking to the streets?
Well, I think there's certain...
You know him from all the Adam Sandler movies. My favorite character, he played 10-Second Tom on 50 First Dates. Alan Covert.
Hey, Dr. Gina, thanks for...
This is Congressman Robert Adderholt off the House floor in between votes to talk to us about what really is taking place in this whole...
What do you say?
It belongs to the taxpayers, Neil. It was never their money to give away.
So they gave it away. What do you want to see now?
Well, what I want to see is more of what happened in the last election happening in this election.
I see that the parallels lining up between the conventions. They both really needed their wives to sort of warm up that audience and make them seem approachable and human.
Very authentic. I think he's speaking to the moms in Middle America.
Okay, so you still think, though, that fiscal issues...
Give them a little slack on that. Here's what I do.
Yeah, but don't forget that the House Budget Committee,
I
under
understand.
Paul Ryan's leadership, identified $150
No, you're quite
billion.
right.
They
Here was my only point. I know you're angry and you're thin, which is two things going for you. But I will say this.
This would be like telling the CEO of your company that you work for, no, I'm sorry, you don't get to be in these meetings. They're closed door. No, this is our money. They work for us.
about the candidates.
I think we will see history made this time around.
Might lose this primary. Huh?
Oh, I think if he gets under 50% of the vote and that brings us to a runoff, he will absolutely lose. I mean, nobody can predict the future, except maybe you with those early numbers. But
I'm a sexist. I've confessed it. There. Can we move on? There, I said it. Call me and complain.
So God then chose me to create my own show, as I said, and I do a lot of analysis, as you can see there, and as recently as last week, gave me my own new television show on a national, really international network that you will be hearing a lot about in the days and weeks to come. I look for ways to carry our message into a culture that is dying. And I will continue that. And in some ways, people will say, and I especially hear from other Christians sometime, well, you know, in the world, not of it, I get that. How far do we go into the world? Well, folks, we just have no choice but to be pretty deep in it right now. I'll tell you that. And so John and I, my husband, had dreamed of coming to California to engage the culture. We figured we can't win politics, and you heard Andrew Bright say this all the time, we can't win the political war unless we first win the cultural war. So we wanted to be here to engage. And then one day when we just decided that we loved our jobs in Alabama, had amazing life there on top of a little mountain overlooking a golf course, literally that very day we'd had the conversation, we're giving up the dream of going to California and fighting the culture. He got a call from a headhunter, first and last ever in his life. This is God saying, it's going to be me. You aren't going to steal my swag. If it's going to happen to you, it's going to be when you know it can't happen. And that's precisely when it's going to happen. Why does God always wait till we're at that point instead of just letting it happen when we're in the midst of the prayer for it? But anyway, I have had some great experiences in my life. I've gotten to meet presidents and queens and movie stars and even B-level prima donnas who think they are stars. But the real stars in this world are sitting right here in this audience. And that's because the real stars shine the brightest when no one is looking. Not just because it happened to them, but because they dared to shine in the darkness while others simply hid in fear. That awesome, miraculous reality lit a fire inside of me that won't die. You see, I've broken in many of the same ways that you've broken in your life. I have doubted that God could restore what the locusts have eaten away. I've wondered if all I'm fighting for is in vain. It isn't. Like you, I know that we have to stay this course, and we have to dare now to fight harder than we've ever fought in our whole entire lives. As the pendulum swings, we have the leftwardmost swing on a trajectory going back to our founding fathers' vision. On our watch, we are implored to choose quickly or have our path chosen for us. The enemy lurks. They think they can distract and intimidate us with bullying, name-calling, accusations, threats of losing our tax exemptions, or our nightmares of Alinsky reincarnations. If you don't believe good things can come in small packages, you can just ask my husband. He might be a little biased, but he'll tell you yes. The enemy thinks they can sway you, but they don't understand that we have no choice but to answer this call. It doesn't feel strange to us because, you know, you and I were made for moments and miracles like this. We just can't let the enemy get in our way. They don't understand the other side, how hard we fought, how much we have to protect, and they don't understand that they have chosen to tread on the wrong people at the wrong time in history because we stand ready to fight with all we have for what we believe is sacred. For us, there is no compromise. They don't get that. JFK said it like this, don't pray for easy lives, pray to be stronger men. Is that what you're praying for? I'm guilty here. Not all the time. I'm telling you, sometimes I'm just like, can I just have a nap? Please, God, just a nap. Some of us dare to fight every day, to fight, to win, to lose, to live, and to die. And some of us never, ever dare to do anything bigger than self. So what is this dare I speak of? Well, I'm going to do one dare for you right now. I'm going to dare to start with Karl Rove. I'm going to call him out as not even as I would Obama, but with an even greater vigor than the statists who have put us all where we are. I call Karl Rove out as the creator of Obama. You know how they love to call him the architect? I'll say he built something all right. He built a scenario in which our hands were tied as conservatives. We couldn't even say we were pro-life for crying out loud, and he got us this president for 2 terms. I dare to call out Karl Rove. In our book, Ladies and Gentlemen, Dr. Paterno and I dare to call out the brave and to call upon the spineless to sprout a backbone or get out of our way. We dare to define what real men are and what real women are. Before men were emasculated by the feminist movement and before women were cut to shreds in our abortion industry, those women, real men, real women, so lost on our culture today. We dare to talk of honor. Remember honor? Your kids can't define it. I promise you. Go home and ask them. They don't know what it is. And if your kids can, it's because you've had them in the right places, but their peers can't. Try it. It's a fun test. Honor. Like honor off? No. We call on the pastors who need to get busy in those pulpits, and we call on them to be the black robe regimen of our day. And any pastor who doesn't know what that means has not done his homework. Make sure you inform him. We call out the murderers who claim the title physician and bastardize the great physician with abandon every single day as they snuff out the life of our most delicate and innocent. We call out the rapists of Lady Liberty as they put her on the front lines of war to fight their fight now, as they confiscate her very tools to protect her own children. I dare to be pro-choice, all right, at least about how I school my children. That's my choice. And I'm pro-choice as to how I practice my faith. And I'm pro-choice as to what weapon I use to protect my household and my petite frame and my children who are vulnerable with me when I walk down a street without my husband. Yeah, I'm pro-choice in those ways. And I'm a heck of a shot, too, by the way. I stand with you as we dare defend America at this pivotal moment in history. This isn't the first time a patriot dared to look in the face of evil and declare it so. Reagan reminded us that standing on the deck of the Arabella in 1630 off the Massachusetts coast, John Winthrop said, "We will be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us, so that if we deal falsely with our God in this work we have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword throughout the world." We will dare, won't we, friends? We will dare and dare and dare, and if by the hand of the one who gave us the privilege to dare we should be struck down, then we will dare deal with that too. As President Ronald Reagan declared in his famous City on a Hill speech, we cannot escape our destiny, nor should we try to do so. The leadership of the free world was thrust upon us 2 centuries ago in that hall in Philadelphia in the days following World War II, when the economic strength and power of America was all that stood. You remember this. All that stood between the world and the return to the Dark Ages. This didn't just happen to us. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave. Every book I sign with intent, and I say to you tonight that we are only free because we are brave. We dare to be. We renew this courage every morning. This is a continuing notion, and my guess is that we'll all be judged not for the outcome, but for our obedience to a sovereign God who calls on us to act with courage because he first did for us. 100 years from now, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will tell your story. The life you live is your story. Be brave and tell it well. I'm going to ask you all to stand up. I'm almost at the conclusion of my little speech here, but I always ask my audiences to stand up because I have reminded you of everything I know to remind you of. It's your chance to remind yourself of something. As I told you before, we are only free because we're brave. Yeah, stretch. I know. We're going to eat soon. God bless you, my brave friends, and God bless America. I want you to say it with me like I dare to. We are, and we won't forget that we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. Stay brave. Thank you so much.
This has been Confessions of a Female Talk Show Host, presented by Gina Loudon. To receive a free catalog of over 250 awesome Bible studies on DVD or CD, all using and defending a literal translation of the Bible, information on upcoming Bible conferences in your area, or details of our missionary outreach and trips to Israel, call Compass at 1-800-977-2177 24 hours a day, or visit us on the web at compass.org.